So we are talking about decentralized key distribution. Okay, here you can find out we have two roles, initiator A and the responder B. Okay, two-person want to communicate with each other. Okay, and how do they transfer keys, or how do they share the keys between them, okay, to have a successful communication? So we have three transactions between A and B. Initiator A, what he do? He first try to establish a communication with the responder B by sending his details. What kind of details he's sending? His identifier, okay? His ID, that is IDA. IDA is nothing but an identifier of the initiator itself. And N1. What is N1? N1 is the nonce. Okay? The nonce generated by initiator A himself. So that has been sent by A to B. So which you can see it in the first transaction from A to B. Okay, you can see the arrow here. And now in response to that first transaction, what responder B does is, so B sends a response to that first transaction. Okay. Now both A and B are maintaining a master key. Okay. They have called a shared master key. You can see the second point here. B responds with a message that's encrypted using a shared master key. Okay. Now what B is doing is B is sending a session key. B is creating a session key, and that session key has been encrypted using a mastered key. Okay. And what is the master key? Master key is the one which is shared between both A and B together. Okay. Every two-person or every entity is having their master key with them. Using that master key, they can share the session key. Okay. Now, this package has been encrypted using the master key. Okay. It's called KM. Okay. So that notation we denote it as KM. That is the master key. Okay. So responder B is encrypting the contents using master key, which is known only to A and B. Okay. And what are those contents he is sending? Okay, yes, the session key, okay, session key which they want to share between them, and IDA which B got the request from, okay, IDA from whom B gets request from, IDB his detail, and N1 is the nonce generated by the sender, okay, and N2 is the nonce generated by himself, that is B. Okay. Now what B does is B does some computation on N1, along with he add his own nonce N2. Okay, that computation he'll be sending along with the uh, transaction. Along with the transaction, he will be sending it to A. Okay. When this second transaction received by A also knows the master key, so A could easily decrypt this. Okay, A could easily decrypt this. Now A comes to know about what? Session key. A comes to know about KS, and A comes to know about his ID, that is whichever he sent as a request earlier, and A comes to know that B is the responder. Okay, that B, the node B is a responder for this message, and in B, A found that his own nonce, some computation done on his own nonce, uh, and N2's nonce, and N2 which is B's nonce. Okay, so that is received by A. Now, what in turn A can respond back to B is A, as it got session key now, A got a session key now. So now A used this session key to encrypt the message. Okay. Now no more A need a master key, because A and B got to know their session key using which they can communicate. Okay. So what A does is A uses session key, and in turn it does computation on that nonce created by responder B. Okay, so that f of n2 means some computation on the nonce which is generated by B. Okay, so that A will be encrypted using a session key, and then it is sent it to B. Okay, and now what B does is as B has the session key with him, as B knows the session key, so so B can easily decrypt this message, the third transaction, and B informs that the nonce which is sent to A, it is proper. Okay, it is means A is a valid user. A is a trusted user. So now A and B can trust on each other, and they have successfully shared the session key, and now hence the distribution of key can happen. So you can see here, although each node must maintain at most n minus 1 master keys. Now what is n here? Suppose if you consider n as a 2, that is n as a 2 nodes. 2 nodes can maintain 1 master key. If there are 2 nodes, they can maintain 1 master key to have a successful communication. So that is the idea. So it is a decentralized key distribution. It means there is nowhere we are making use of KDC, that is a trusted third person. Okay, trusted third person is not there. Okay, so that's why it's called a decentralized. What is decentralized? Because these two people are not taking the help of KDC to send their session key. If you remember, probably in my last class, we have discussed a key distribution scenario. Okay, I hope you remember that diagram, wherein we have 5 steps. Okay, 3 authentication steps and 3 key distribution steps. Okay, we have discussed key distribution scenario wherein KDC will be helping both peers A and B in distribution of the shared key, right? So that was the centralized distribution wherein KDC is helping the key distribution. But in this case, it is decentralized. Why it is called decentralized? Because A and B both himself, they are trying to share the session key using the master key. So that master key concept is something new here, which was not there in the key distribution process. Okay, so there what we have a something called a master key as well, but master key has been maintained only between the trusted source and the person himself. Okay, using which a KDC is encrypting the message. Okay, but in this case, every two entities sharing the master key using which they try to share the session key. Okay, so that's what is the concept of decentralized key distribution. So please do remember this method. Okay, suppose whenever we ask explain the decentralized key distribution, then you need to explain the process which won't take the help of a third person or a third party. Okay, only two roles A and B, and how does the session key has been exchanged between those two uh, entities. Okay, so that you need to explain as a process of decentralized key distribution. Okay, so next I will just go through the this one symmetric 14.2 symmetric key distribution using asymmetric encryption. Okay, asymmetric. Okay, the moment you heard the term asymmetric, probably you might have come, something has clicked in your mind. Okay, because already we have discussed these keywords like symmetric, what by symmetric, was asymmetric. Asymmetric will take two keys. Symmetric will take only one key. Okay, so whenever we are discussing with respect to asymmetric encryption, then it deals with two keys. What are the two keys? Private and public. Okay. And now what is this? It is symmetric key distribution. Now what is symmetric key distribution? Symmetric key distribution in the sense we are distributing only one key, but using two key technique. Okay, so let us try to understand the title first. Symmetric key distribution using asymmetric encryption. Okay, it means we try to distribute one key. Okay, that one key you can call it in many ways. That one key you can call it as private key. That one key you can call it as a shared key. Okay, that one key you can call it a secret key. Okay, you can call that in a many ways. Okay, symmetric key distribution using asymmetric encryption means we are trying to distribute that private key using two key technique, using private and public key encryption. Okay, I hope you are clear with the title now. Okay, then development. Give me a second. Page number 418. Okay, yeah. So right here, symmetric key distribution using asymmetric key encryption. Okay, so discussing about 14.2. So I hope the title was clear to you. Now I'll directly take out to the diagram first. Okay. So the first diagram is 14.7. You can just concentrate to that diagram. It is simple use of public key encryption to establish a session key. Okay. So how do we establish a session key using public key encryption? Okay. The moment we say public key encryption, that is public key is PUA. We determine normally public key as a PUA and private key as a PRA. Okay, with respect to a user. Okay, so there are only two steps here, two communication between A and B. Okay, now what is that communication? As we know that every user can generate a pair of keys. Okay, like user A generates a pair of keys as PUA and PRA, and user B can generate a pair of keys as PUB and PRB. Okay, that is a private key and public key maintained with each user. Okay, now you can see the steps here. There are four steps. A generates public key, private key pair, okay, and transmits a message to B, consisting of PUA and an identifier IDA. Okay, so what is that? In the first transaction, what is happening by A is revealing his public key. Okay, A is maintaining both keys, that is PRA and PUA, but out of that pair, A is revealing only his public key PUA to B, okay, with B, okay, by sending his public key and his identifier, which is IDA, okay, to B. Okay, now B is getting some request. B is getting some request by someone. Now, who that person is, that B don't aware of. Okay, so now what is B can just by seeing this message, just by seeing the message which he got just now, what B can assume is, so I'm getting a request by IDA with his public key. Okay, I'm getting a request by IDA with some public key. Okay, with some public key. So that B got. Okay, now after that, what B does is B generate a secret key KS. What is KS? KS is nothing but session key. Okay, and transmit it to A. Okay, so this request is in the first communication is in request of session key, and B does respond to it. What B does is B generate a secret key, which is KS, and transmit it to A, which is encrypted with A's public key. Okay, how B can encrypt with using A's public key? Because just now in the previous request, B got a public key of IDA. Okay, so using that public key, B generates a session key and he just transfers to A. Okay, and that we can find it in the second transaction. Okay, what is the second transaction? E of PUA, comma KS. Okay, what's PUA? PUA is the public key of A, which he got in the previous process, and KS is the session key generated by, which is generated by B. Okay, that is sent by B to A. Okay, now A computes decryption. How? If the message is encrypted by using his public key, then only A could have decrypted, right? We already know this, right? A could have decrypted using his own private key, and he got to know about the KS. Okay, the moment A decrypt this transaction, A could get the KS. Okay, we can call the secret key because only A can decrypt the message. A and B will know now KS. Okay, so A will now got KS after decrypting this, and B have sent KS, so B knows KS. Okay, so hence A and B both knows about the secret key. So once that secret key has been shared between A and B, A discards his public key and private key, and B discards a public key of A which he got in the previous process. Okay, so A discards PUA and PRA, and B discards PUA once they were able to establish the secret key sharing between them. Okay, so that the secret key has been shared, and using that they can communicate further. Give me a second. That page that went somewhere. Okay, this one. Yeah. Uh, okay. So what happened now? Using public key encryption, both A and B are able to share secret key between them. Okay, both A and B able to share secret key between them. Now, is there any man-in-the-middle attack possible here? Yes, obviously, because A is trying to fetch session key by sending his public key, and obviously, public key is known to everyone, so anyone can easily masquerade uh, themselves as A. Okay, anyone can claim themselves as A. So, man-in-the-middle attack can be easily possible in this particular process 40.7. How? So that we will be seeing it further. Okay, so I'll be taking you to the next diagram. So the process has been displayed here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. I'll be directly taking you to the diagram first. Okay, just by seeing the diagram, you can easily understand. Okay, so this is the another man-in-the-middle attack. We already seen one man-in-the-middle attack. Okay, we already seen one. This is another. That's why you can see here. It is named another man-in-the-middle attack. Okay, so the man-in-the-middle attack which we've seen earlier is the defilement process. I hope you remember. The defilement is the key exchange process. Okay, defilement is a key exchange process. There, man-in-the-middle attack was possible. That's why we discuss one more method called algebra. Okay, so this man-in-the-middle attack is in case of sharing the secret key or a session key. And now, how is that possible? Okay, just we'll look at here. Second, somebody is getting the lobby. Give me a sec. Let me check. Okay. Okay. So there are again two roles, Alice and Bob, and the Darth is the middleman. Darth is the attacker. Okay. So as I said already, Alice can generate a pair of keys, and Bob can generate a pair of keys. That is a private and public key. And the same as the Darth. Okay. Darth is the intruder. Even he can generate his own private and public key pair. Okay. So in the previous process, okay, in the previous process which you have seen is so there are only two transactions, right? So what happening in the first transaction? A is sending simply his public key and his detail. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, so the same thing is happening. The same thing is happening in the first transaction in the earlier diagram, right? A is sending his public key along with his IDA. Okay, and A is sending to whom? A is sending this information to B. Okay, but what happened is the Darth is interrupt that message. Okay, Darth intercept that message, that PUA and IDA. Then what Darth does is Darth will send his public key along with IDA himself. Okay, so now what Darth is doing? Darth is pretending himself as A. Okay, Darth is pretending himself as A as Darth is introducing himself with B. Darth is introducing himself as B with as A, and he's sending his public key. Okay, and Bob does not comes to know about public key because public key is in the form of hashes. Public key is in the form of hash length. It is the format of hexadecimal number. Okay. So Bob cannot know that the public key which has been come along with IDA, it is A only. Okay. Now what Bob thinks is A is sending, A is requesting the session key, and that's why A is sending his public key. Okay, so that's what Bob thinks is. Then what Bob does, Bob will create secret key, that is KS. Bob will create secret key, and that secret key Bob will encrypt using the public key which he got just now in the previous process. Okay, so Bob is thinking that this public key is from A, but actually it is not from A, it is from the intruder. Okay, so what Bob does is Bob will simply encrypt the session key using the public key of Darth, which he just now got in the previous process. Okay. Now what Darth is doing? Now Darth will able to decrypt it using his own private key. Why? Because the previous message has encrypted using his public key, so he can easily decrypt this message using his private key, and he got to know about session key. Now Darth will come to know about the session key sent by B. Okay, so that was the process. And what Darth do now is, as Darth know the public key of A, so he try to again encrypt the same session key using A's public key. Okay, A's public key, and he just send it to A. Okay, now what A thinks is, so A thinks that this message, he received from B. Okay, as he has requested to B, so A thinks that he got a response from B. Okay, along with the secret key KS. Okay, so when A got a secret key KS, so A discards both the private key and public key as we already discussed earlier. Okay, and even B discards the public key. Okay, but it was a public key, and they have a case between them. So A starts sending all the messages encrypted by using KS. Okay, thinking that their processes, these communications are secure. But in turn, it is not so, because already the man in the middle have already got access on the session key KS. So any message sent by Alice to Bob are intercepted by B. Even they can be modified, they can be seen, they can be okay. It can be modified in any manner. Okay, so the communication between A and B are more safer. So that's why it is called another man in the middle attack in case of key distribution. Okay, I hope this process is clear, right? Okay. Next, so there's something called public key distribution of secret keys. Okay, public key distribution of secret keys. Now, in the earlier process, we have been only two arrows. Okay, if you remember, the, the, the diagram which is very similar to this, but we have only two arrows. Okay, like from A to B and from B to A. A to B, what was there? A to B, A is sending simply his public key along with his identifier, and B is in turn responding him back with the session key. Okay, so that was there in the earlier process. Now it is simply enhanced. It's an enhanced version of the previous diagram. So they try to secure the process as it is not secure that the man in the middle attack was possible during that process. So now they try to introduce public key encryption and hence distribution of secret keys. Now we try to understand this process now. So in the first transaction, what is happening? A is sending his detail, that is IDA, and along with announced generated by him, that is N1 and IDA. Now both encrypted using his public key, A's public key. Okay, so A is encrypting his detail and announced generated by him using his using B's public key, that's PUB. Okay, PUB, as A knows the public key and anyone knows the public key of B. So A is using the receiver's public key and he's encrypting his detail and the nonce. Okay, and this message could only be decrypted by B. Okay, none of the persons in the globe can decrypt this message, but anyone can claim themselves as A. Anyone can claim themselves as A, but none of them can decrypt this message other than B. Okay, as it is encrypted using PUB. Okay, so A is encrypting his detail and N1 with B's public key and send it to B. So only B can decrypt that message using his private key. Okay, only B could have decrypted this message using his private key, and B got to know that IDA, that is initiator A, wants to have a secret key from me. Okay, A wants to share secret key between them, right? Now, what B in turn reply? Again, B want to make sure that the person who is claiming himself as A is the trusted person or the same person. Now, B wants to make sure about that. Now, what B is doing? B is sending a response for the first transaction as, okay, so B is adding his own nonce called N2, okay, along with N1, which is sent by initiator A. B is adding his own nonce N2 and B is encrypting that with public key of A. Okay, now B want to ensure that the person who is claiming himself as A must be the same person, A. Okay, that's why what B is doing, B is using A's public key. Okay, if B is using A's public key, then only A could have decrypted using his own private key. Okay, so none of them can decrypt this message using A's private key because only A has it, right? So B is including his own nonce into and that message is encrypted using A's public key and send it across A as the second initiator, okay, as a second transaction. Now, if A is a genuine person, if A is that same person, then only he could have decrypted using his own private key. Okay, so once A has decrypted using one private key, so A comes to know that his nonce which is sent in the previous process has reached to B. Okay, has reached to B, and now B wants a confirmation from him. Now B wants confirmation from A as a trusted person. Okay. Now with the second step, A can trust B now. Okay. With the second communication, A now got that B as the trusted person, as his N1 got back to him. Okay, his N1 which is sent, uh, the same N1 got back to A. So A comes to know that B is the same person. Okay. Now still B is not sure about A. Okay. Still B is not sure about whether the first request is getting it is from the A or not. Okay. That's why A is sending a response as in the third process. Okay. A is sending his confirmation, his identity. Okay. To prove his identity, A is sending the third transaction. Okay. Now what is that? A is including or A is encrypting N2. What is N2? N2 is sent by B. Okay, A is encrypting that N2 using B's public key. Okay, using B's public key. Okay, now B can decrypt his using his own private key and got to know that B got his N2 back. It means that uh, B has sent N2 using A's public key, which would be decrypted only by A. If B is getting the same N2 back, it means this transaction, the second transaction, could be opened only by the A himself, only by the genuine person, A himself. Okay, so now with the third step, B can make sure that uh, the second communication is reached to A. It reached to A, and the claiming person is A himself. The claiming person is A himself. So now B can trust that the receiver is A, or the initiator is A. Okay, so with the third person, both A and B now make sure about their identity with each other. A and B both were make sure about their entities in the process. Now, hence A, as A and B both can trust on each other, now A is sending a session key or a secret key. Okay, so how that? That is using public key encryption. What is public key encryption? A is encrypting KS using his private key first. Okay, you first see the innermost operation. That is EPRA of KS. What is that? A is encrypting the secret key or you call it session key using his private key, and the entire package is again encrypted using public key. Okay, again encrypted using public key. Okay, so whoever have access to this, they need a private key first. Okay, anyone who try to access this package, they need a private key. Okay, and who has that private key? Only B himself. Private key is maintained only by B because it has been encrypted using PUB. So it needs the same private key to decrypt it. Okay? And only B does that. And only B has it. Okay. So B decrypt the package using his private key, and then he got the inner package, which could be easily decrypted by using public key, which everyone knows, and even B does. Okay. So B uses the public key of A, and B now got KS. Okay. Now using this process, KS, that is secret key or session key, both were able to share secretly. Okay, so which was not in the case of the previous. That's why man in the middle attack was possible. Okay, the previous process, the case was revealed to the third person. Why? Because it was not secure. That's why another man in the middle attack was happened. But in this case, as both A and B, first they made sure about their identity with each other, and then once they confirm their identity with each other, then they were sharing the KS. Okay, that's why public key distribution of secret key concept. Okay, okay. I hope this is clear. And the same thing, the same explanation has been given here. You can just go through it. Okay, so in the next class, we're going to discuss distribution of public keys. So far, we have discussed what we have discussed how to distribute symmetric. Okay, as you have seen title. So in the key distribution chapter, okay, the thing is you have to understand the title first. Okay, so here it's a symmetric key distribution. It means private key distribution or secret key distribution. I can say symmetric key means private key distribution or session key distribution or secret key distribution. That's why that KS. What is KS? KS is a secret key. Secret key is only one key, okay, which has been maintained by both the person in the communication, in the encryption and decryption process. Okay, that's why how does we distribute that private key or secret key using two key technique, using asymmetric key technique. Okay, so that we have discussed so far. The next class, what we are discussing? We are discussing asymmetric key distribution. Now, what is asymmetric key distribution? That is public key distribution. You can even call public key distribution using, again, you can either you take it using symmetric encryption or asymmetric encryption. Okay? So you can discuss both the steps. Public key distribution using any of the encryption techniques. Okay, but the agenda is how do we distribute public keys and how do we distribute private keys. So those two things were comes in the key management process. And so far we discussed symmetric distribution technique. Okay, how do we distribute private key between both entities Alice and Bob. Okay, so far we discussed that, right? So there were many diagrams. Okay, so you need to ensure, so you need to go through with each and every diagram. Okay, so this process which you're seeing right now, figure 14.7, which was normal key distribution process, which was not safe. That's how man in the middle attack was possible. And then we have discussed about this public key distribution of secret keys. Okay, in this process, it, it was much secure. Okay, A and B first both were confirmed their entities and then they were sharing the secret key. Okay, so after that we'll be tomorrow's class we'll be moving to distribution of public keys. So there are four techniques on that: public key announcement, public available directories, public key authorities, public key certificates. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be discussing with public key distribution. Okay.